Good morning, everybody. That one. Nice to see you all. It's a sunny day here in Spain. Been a little chilly the last couple of days, but today it's much nicer. Feel free to say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from today. Rainy Wales. Oh, wasn't it sunny last week, Amanda? Oh. Hi, Miriam. Nice to meet you. Argentina. Hi, Virginia. I've still got to go to Argentina one day. Bilbao, Barcelona, fantastic. Nepal. Oh, hey, Ellen. Greece, lovely to see you all. Romania, Galicia. Oh, Virginia, thank you. India, Macedonia, excellent. Wow, we've got people from everywhere joining us. We are live on Facebook as well. Hi from Seville. Not me from Seville. That was Catalina saying hi from Seville. And Italy, Karime in Italy. Yeah, so we're live on Facebook as well. If anybody's joining us on Facebook, I apologize. There's a bit of a lag. So everything that I say, you hear about 5 seconds afterwards. In the Philippines, Magical Manoj is back. Hi, Manoj. More from Macedonia. Hi, Tatiana. Nice to meet you. And yes, good evening, because it might be afternoon or it might be evening wherever you are. So thanks for joining us. Okay, so this session this morning, because it's our last webinar for a while, we thought that we would do a session giving you ideas for how you could continue to develop professionally over the next couple of months. Possibly they're things that you're already familiar with, which is great to know that people are using them. And if not, hopefully we can give you some new ideas for ways that you can continue to develop as a teacher trainer over the next couple of months. Morning, Sally, and morning, Belma from Albania. Okay, I will be sharing the slides at the end of the session. There's lots of names, there's lots of web pages, there's lots of information on the slides. So don't worry about trying to furiously write down every person, every site that I mentioned, because I will send them out to you. And hi from Nepal, Kamal. Okay, so I thought really that I would start with a poll to try and find out what your expectations and what your experiences are of your continuing professional development. So, apologies to people on Facebook. It did say that I could set up a poll, but I wasn't sure how to do it, trying to manage 2 sites at the same time. But in fact, I'm going to share my screen first, and then you can see the questions that I had in mind. Okay, so these were kind of the 4 questions that I was thinking of. Do you work in a centre which offers CPD? Is it seems one size fits all? Do you live in an area where other people are interested? And what do you want to get from your CPD? So for the people on Zoom, I'm going to launch the poll now. So you can have a look at those questions, choose the answer which best suits you. Or if there's an answer that you feel is missing, feel free to write it in the chat box. And for those of you that are on Facebook, feel free to write your answers in the chat, and then I'll be able to go through and have a look at them afterwards. Okay, so again, those 4 questions. Do you work in a centre which offers CPD? Maybe you do, maybe you work in a school where nothing is offered, or perhaps you're freelance and so you don't have the opportunity to be offered CPD and you have to do it all yourself. Secondly, sometimes I think professional development can be seen as a one-size-fits-all. So everything's obligatory, which has its pros and its cons. Obviously, sometimes it's useful if all your CPD is obligatory, because it perhaps forces you to look into areas that you wouldn't normally look at. Whereas on the other hand, if it's obligatory, you may find that a lot of it is irrelevant to to you. Okay. Thinking about the area where you live, you know, do you have a lot of other teachers in the area that you can connect with? Or perhaps, you know, you're in a rural area where you are the only educator. And finally, kind of, what do you want to get from your CPD? So the ideas that I had for the poll, for the people who are on Zoom, I said kind of general practical ideas that I can use immediately. And I think they've been the sort of webinars that we've been producing over the past couple of months. You know, ideas for teaching young learners, ideas for teaching exam preparation, games. Another option I gave was ideas for new areas to explore. So for example, perhaps people are more interested in educational technology, EdTech, or perhaps they're looking at finding out more about task-based learning. Another option was looking more at the more theoretical side of language learning and language teaching. So resources to help you develop your understanding of the theory behind it more. And another option was a course to help you get a better job, such as the Trinity Diploma. What were the other two? I had ideas for specific groups, such as teaching young learners or teaching exam classes or teaching business English. Ideas for ways to connect with teachers locally, and ideas for ways to connect with teachers around the world. Okay, so about 69% of people have voted. So I'll give it just one more minute. And I'm just going to go on to Facebook to say hi to anyone who's there. If they're there, they might not be. Okay, so we've got morning from Macedonia, from United Arab Emirates, Inan City, which I think is possibly Philippines, Cagayan Valley. Ooh, that looks like a Cuban flag, but I'm not 100% sure. My apologies. But nice to see you all. Okay, so I'm going to give you about one more minute for those of you on the Zoom poll to finish answering, and then we can share the results. As I say, if you're watching on Facebook, have a look at the questions and then feel free to write your answers in the chat box, and I'll have a look through the chat box afterwards. Lost my chat box here. Yeah, Miriam had an idea as well for ideas for one-to-one teaching. And that is something that we haven't really looked at during these webinars. I think perhaps, you know, we've approached the webinars as our teaching environment, and our teachers at the moment have been teaching groups, they've been teaching younger learners, they've been teaching exam preparation class. And so our ideas have been very much focused on, well, this is what we're doing. These are probably the things that other people are doing. So absolutely, there's lots of scope for areas that we don't teach in that we could look into the future as well. So teaching one-to-one is definitely a good idea. And in fact, Stephanie mentioned it in a previous webinar. She said, you know, sometimes building rapport with a group is okay, but you can sometimes find it more difficult if you're trying to build rapport with a one-to-one student in an online environment. Okay, so we've had about 5 minutes on the poll. So I'm going to end the polling. Apologies if you haven't finished. And then I can share the results for people. Okay, so luckily a lot of you work in centres where there are CPD opportunities. Unfortunately, 6 people don't and 5 people don't work in a school. Okay. So generally here, the approach is that yes, it's one size fits all, but that's a positive thing. So you can kind of, as I said before, it forces you to look into different areas. Okay, sometimes it's irrelevant. Great to see that, you know, a third of you have the ability to kind of tailor your CPD within your school. I think that's such a good approach for the school to take, that they're giving you that opportunity. Okay. Fantastic. Lots of people have colleagues that they know in the area that they can connect with. And again, yeah, we're going to look at ways that you can develop your personal learning network, your PLN, online. as well over the next session. And finally, kind of the ideas that people wanted. Okay, so great to see that, you know, almost everyone is interested in exploring new avenues. And I think that's great as teachers. You know, we were kind of thrown in at the deep end when we suddenly went into online teaching and had to develop the skills for that very quickly. But then it actually makes you realize, you know, you can do these other things and you can look into new avenues and you can try out new techniques, new methodologies and things like that. And it doesn't have to be so scary as it perhaps seems. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. And okay, let's have a look then. Oh, yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned before, we've done a lot of webinars. We've done about 10 over the past couple of months. You've probably seen them. If you haven't, they're on the Facebook page, on the videos tab, and they're also on our YouTube channel. Also, the publishers. These are the kind of the 5 main publishers that I'm familiar with. So I looked at their website. Obviously, the publishers produce a lot of content throughout the year. You know, they offer webinars throughout the year to work on different areas, work with different age groups, different levels, etc. But I think that definitely since we've all been moved into this online teaching environment, the publishers have done a lot as well to really support teachers. So they've got a load more webinars in their archives over the past couple of months than perhaps they've had in previous years. So that's really great to see. So there's, you know, there are so many people out there who are sharing their ideas, which is lovely. Okay, so for example, Trinity, obviously Trinity came first for me, as we do the Trinity Cert TESOL and Dip TESOL. They also do a series of courses called Quest for Best. Now, if you teach Trinity ISE, which is the Integrated Skills in English, or if you teach Trinity GESE, which is the General Exam of Spoken English, I think, they, as I say, they run these courses called Quest for Best, which really focuses on the skills that the learners need at a particular level. I've done a couple of them for B1 and I found them really useful. So if you have a look at the Trinity website, or if you kind of Google Trinity Quest for Best, you might be able to find them on there. They are synchronous courses, so they're run at specific dates during the year to allow you to interact with other course participants. But if you sign up for their mailing address, their mailing list, then they can keep you informed of any upcoming courses. Macmillan have loads of resources online, and they also, certainly in Spain in the past, they've held Teachers' Days. So for example, in Granada or in Madrid or Malaga, they did one in Cadiz a few years ago as well. So in the past, they have offered these face-to-face events, but with the recent transition to online teaching, obviously a lot of their resources have now moved online as well. A lot of their webinars are online, as webinars would be, really. And then Pearson, OUP, Cambridge, I mean, so many great speakers with lots of experience working for these different publishers with lots of really great ideas to share. So when I send out the slides, you'll be able to click on the links. I think I've generally linked to the archives page because then you can kind of see what's happened before, and then it's easy to go on to the upcoming events page if you want to sign up for something else. Okay. So the next big thing is Twitter. So I don't know if anybody's on Twitter. Feel free to say yes in the chat box if you are on Twitter. I joined Twitter a few years ago and then I stopped using it and then I went back to it. So Richard's on there. Mohammed not. Well, you might be convinced, Mohammed, by the end of this that it's a good place to join. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with Twitter, it's a social media site. I would say, certainly for me, it's more professional than social. I think different people use it in different ways, but certainly in my group, my followers, the people I follow, it's very much used for professional terms rather than social media, as it were. And it enables you to send messages, share websites, connect with people from around the world. So if you decide to join Twitter, it can be a bit overwhelming at first to know how to connect with people. Because obviously you open a profile and then, wow, where do I start now? So you can use these hashtags to find like-minded people on Twitter. So obviously we're all educators. So these are kind of the top four are much more about education. And then PLN at the bottom here is for your professional or personal learning network. So people often use this hashtag when they want to try and connect with other people. And obviously then people will read their message and think, okay, yeah, this is kind of the area that I'm interested in as well, and so respond accordingly. So ELT Chat, this was a group that was around for a few years, and they used to meet on Twitter every Wednesday, and they would discuss a topic which was relevant to education. Unfortunately, they've stopped ELT Chat fairly recently because they found that, numbers were dwindling, people weren't connecting as much. And I have to admit, I was one of them who stopped joining in on the weekly chats. But people still use this hashtag to connect with other people in ELT on Twitter. So it's worth checking out. Also, if you have a look for ELT Chat on Twitter, you can find a link to the archives of all the previous chats. So each week when they had a chat, somebody would offer to write a summary of the chat, and then that was uploaded to the website. So again, if you're looking for ideas, there's lots of really interesting discussions on different topics. ELT Whiteboard kind of does what it says. It's people sharing pictures of their whiteboards from their ELT lessons. And it's just another way to develop your skills. So you can kind of see how a person approaches a grammatical point, or the types of drawing that a person uses to outline a story or something like that. It's more of a fun ELT topic. Lots of great images being shared, but worth having a look at. The third one is SIG, stands for Special Interest Group. Now, if you've heard of IATEFL, IATEFL is the International Association of TEFL. And they have, within being IATEFL, they also have these special interest groups. So for example, there's pronunciation, PromSig. There's MoreSig, which is materials and writers. There's a young learners SIG as well. So there's these smaller special interest groups within IATEFL. And during lockdown, two of the teacher development SIG coordinators, Fiona Mochlin and Tyson Seaburn, they were organising a SIG tweet meet. I'm not sure whether it was once or twice a week, but if you follow that hashtag, then you'll be able to look for when the next SIG tweet meet is. So they would just meet up for an hour with a cup of tea, again with a topic in mind to think about and to discuss, and just have a chat. Ours is a very interactive profession, and I think a lot of people have been finding the lack of interaction challenging. We've kind of all gone into our own little bubbles of teaching online. And although we're interacting with our students, we're not interacting with colleagues in the same way as we used to. So, you know, we're not in the staff room, we're not perhaps chatting to a friend on the bus on the way home, we're not attending conferences. So something like the SIG Tweet Meet is a great way to meet other people. Okay, and then one more. This is more aimed at people who are teacher trainers, as I know some of you are. Edie Chat is, again, a monthly chat that takes place on Twitter. And it's aimed really at CELTA trainers, but as a Trinity Cert TESOL trainer, I've gone along and participated as well. And again, they focus on a different discussion topic each month. So they normally have a poll so that people can submit ideas and then vote on which topic they would find most interesting to discuss. So that's a nice way, again, to meet other trainers from around the world. Okay, I've got 3 top tips for Twitter. This is not only from my kind of, it's really kind of my experience as a user. So these are the 3 things that I look for when I decide who I'm going to follow. Okay, so first of all is choosing an appropriate name. Obviously, lots of people on Twitter use their real name, which is great. If you decide not to use your real name, I'd recommend something that defines you as a teacher. So something with ELT in, for example, so that people can immediately recognize you as an educator. You tend to get a lot of bots on Twitter. So a lot of these fake accounts, which might be, for example, Roberto 567911. And I'm always a little wary of accounts which are just a name and then a series of numbers. You know, so do try and think about a name which will make people recognize you as an educator. Okay, next tip is to complete your bio. So when you have your profile page, it gives you a little space just to say what your interests are. And again, I think people are much more likely to follow you back if they can see that you're interested in similar things to them. Okay, so saying that you're a teacher, saying where you work, saying what your interests are, that will help you to make connections. I think mine kind of says that I'm a teacher and then that I like zombies. So, you know, a bit of personal information to help build rapport as well in our online environment. And then finally, I do recommend adding a picture. I think, again, it makes you a real person rather than a bot, essentially. And it doesn't have to be a picture of you. I know that some people aren't comfortable sharing their images online, but just, you know, a picture of a person drawn on a whiteboard that says, I'm a teacher, or a picture of a pretty flower or something like that. Okay. So this is an example of one group who are very active on Twitter. It's hashtag Edie Chat You, and it's a space for educators, not just from the European Union, but from around the world, to come together weekly to discuss different topics. So if you join them, they've already set up kind of the 4 topics for this month. They meet on a Saturday, I believe. Oh yeah, there it is. 1 o'clock Central European time. So 3 hours later from now. And this idea as well of using, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think this is kind of follow back teachers. So if you add that to a message, then other teachers will follow you and you follow them. And it's a way to grow, to build your connections. Okay, so well worth a look. And as it says, it's kind of a multilingual educational chat, which I think is great as well. Right, on to the next page. So as I said, Twitter can be a little overwhelming. And it's difficult to know who to follow. So I thought I'd give you some ideas to start and share some fabulous people on Twitter, on ELT Twitter. So on Friday, was it Friday? No, it was Thursday. On Thursday, I sent out a tweet. Here I've got my hashtag ELT chat and my hashtag PLN to say, you know, I'm prepping this webinar. What blogs would you especially recommend? Because I know which blogs I follow, but there are so many other blogs out there. And it was great to kind of learn about some new blogs from the replies that I got as well. So these are kind of the people that replied. And just to give you an idea, like one of these people is a close friend. And I think possibly two of them I've actually met other than the close friend. So, you know, out of about 15 people, I can say I've met 3 of them. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about Twitter is that you can connect really easily with like-minded people from all across the world. Okay, so for example, we've got Edward in Russia, Tisol Matthews in Thailand, 11th Hour is in Japan, 11th Hour Special, Mark Jones is in Japan. So there's really an opportunity to meet with different people, and that helps you as well to appreciate different teaching environments. As I said before, I think I do have a tendency to be quite Spain. This is my little Spanish bubble, and perhaps even Cadiz bubble when I think about teaching. Cadiz is very different to Madrid and Barcelona in terms of language education. So I think, you know, connecting with people from around the world, you can meet other people and share different perspectives on education. Right, and then there were 4 people on Twitter, or 4 groups on Twitter, who are really advocating for change within our profession. So I wanted to give them a special mention. So Marek is doing a lot of work for teachers whose first language isn't English. Okay, so thinking about ways to get a job. Okay, we know that there is a lot of bias towards people whose first language is English within our profession. And so he's really advocating for a change in this area. Okay, whether it's informing teachers about the steps that they can take to become more employable, as it were, and as well educating school owners about the situation too. The second one, Parisa, and a group called, this is Women of Colour in ELT. So again, supporting women of colour in ELT and raising everyone's awareness of the issues that they are facing. Again, lots of gender bias and also racial bias towards a particularly white teacher with an RP accent. And then Tyson, who I've mentioned before, he's doing a lot for representation in ELT materials. So thinking about both, I've got to have this written down, LGBTQIA and also race within the materials that we are producing. Again, to make the materials that our students are using more diverse and more, I've forgotten the word, when more relatable, sorry, apologies. Okay, so making the materials that our students are using relatable so that they can appreciate the diversity of the world. And finally, ELT Footprint, which I've mentioned before, which is looking at social change in regards to the climate crisis and especially our impact as educators, both in terms of how we educate our students and also thinking about the resources that we use. Okay, quite interesting. Kind of in this whole, let's save the trees and let's go more paper-based. In fact, the servers that we use to store all this information are incredibly damaging to the environment as well. So not great news, unfortunately. Okay, so these 4 also have groups on Facebook. So we've got the TEFL Equity Advocates and Academy, Marek also offers courses. Women in Colour in ELT, 4C in ELT by Tyson Seaburn, which is the representation, ELT footprint. And then also there's a group which has started just recently called ELT, the Social Justice, which again, it's looking at kind of bigger issues within ELT. One thing I would say is that the spirit of these groups is about building a community. So it's about engaging with like-minded professionals, and also as a way to open your mind to the issues which exist within ELT. And I will admit that I'm not fully aware of all these issues, which is why I think it's important to join these groups and to find out more and to take action where we can. Okay, so these are kind of bigger groups on ELT. Then these are three kind of, three groups that I'm a member of that I thought I would share with you. So one of them is a group which Cecilia Nobre set up, which is called Private English Teachers Reloaded. And it's a space for teachers from around the world to share ideas, to share lesson plans, to share everything. I've just seen a question from both Kamal and Tanka. What is 4C? And I have to admit, I don't know. It's also the name of his blog, and I forgot to look, but I will try and find out, so apologies. The second group that I've just recently joined, I'm not sure how long it's been up for, is Rachel's The TEFL Zone. This is content which is curated by Rachel. So there she'll share ideas from the British Council, she'll share ideas from her blog, she'll share lots of different things for you to find there. And the third one, if anyone is thinking of taking their teacher training to the next level and wants to take the Delta or the Dip TESOL, there's a group on Facebook which was set up by Miles, and it's called Candidates and Survivors. So it's a place to share your experiences. So the idea being that the survivors, the people who have taken one of these courses, can be there to provide support for people who are candidates, if they have any questions about resources, or as well as part of these courses, you're required to submit larger projects, which often require gathering information from different people. So it's a good place to share questionnaires if you're trying to gather information for a thesis or something. Oh, and thank you. Ellen's replied about the 4 C's. Of course, the 21st century skills, possibly. Critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. I could message Tyson and find out whether that's what it is. But thank you, Ellen. Okay, one thing that I would add now is you'll see that I've kind of tried to reference people. And these are their Twitter handles. Now, a lot of these people, obviously, especially these people, are also on Facebook. But I would recommend perhaps approaching them on Twitter rather than on Facebook. Now, this is just from a personal point of view. I'm finding that my social media is becoming more and more professional, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I do think that it's important to recognize the fact that we need time off. And I think that when all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, can't think of any others, they're the 4 that I use, when they become much more professional, it becomes much more difficult for us to just turn off from work. Okay, so I would recommend, approaching people on Twitter if you want to make professional contacts. And if you do try to make friends on Facebook, don't be offended if people don't accept friend requests. They're probably more likely to respond on Twitter. Okay. So, yep, LinkedIn, Kadime. LinkedIn is also a great place to make contacts. It's one that I haven't included on there because I don't know why I didn't include it, but definitely it's another place where you can meet like-minded people, make connections, and yeah, and chat to people about your profession. So I talked a little bit before in the poll about having connections to people locally. So these are kind of 3 teaching groups on Facebook, which are specific to our teaching. Okay, so very locally, we've got English teachers in Cadiz. Kind of wider, we've got TEFL teachers in Seville. Seville is kind of our nearest big city, so there's a lot more English teachers there. And then getting to kind of a national level, teaching in Spain. Okay, so it's worth, if you're not a member of a group on Facebook, it's worth looking to see if any of these kind of combinations exist. So English teachers in, blah, blah, blah. TEFL teachers in, blah, blah, blah. Teaching in, blah, blah. And then you might find that there's a group that's already set up, which you can join and connect with people on there. One other thing that you can do is set up your own group. And this is what we did, Simon and I and another colleague, Natalie, about 10 years ago. We set up an organization locally called TEFL del Sur, so like TEFL in the South. And the reason for this was there's a regional association here in Andalusia called ACEIA, the Asociación de Centros de Idiomas, or de Educación de Idiomas in Andalusia. So it's kind of a regional group for language teachers, and they hold a fabulous annual conference every year in November, which is great, and it's grown and grown. Now there's like 600 people that attend this one-day conference. And I found that I wanted more. I thought that having this big one-day conference was really great. But then, that happened in November, and I still had another 7 months of teaching to go. And although it was good for kind of getting those ideas at that point, I'm the sort of person that I like kind of regular little bursts of continuing professional development. And so we decided to set up this local organization. And this is obviously pre-COVID, we would meet 3 times a year. So once in October, once in January, and then again in April, May sort of time. So kind of following the terms to give teachers a little burst of professional development in each term. Really easy to set up. We kept our costs incredibly low. It's quite a small organization, and what we do is we invite ourselves. No, we hold the event in different language schools in the area. So, we would say, would you be interested in hosting an event? So if you do know teachers in your local area who are working in different centres, it's something that's really easy to do. We charged 10 euros for an event, and we had a coffee break, and then we had a beer or refreshments break at the end, because as well, we thought that the social networking and the professional networking was really important as well. It was great for teachers to have a chat, to make connections, make friends as well during morning events. And we held 2 different types of event to start with. So we did mini conferences where we had 3 speakers come along and do kind of a 1-hour session each. We also did swap shops, which was fantastic because, teachers, we all have so many fantastic ideas. And I think sometimes the idea of presenting a 1-hour session was a bit nerve-wracking for teachers. So we did this swap shop where we all just sat down and somebody said, I've got an idea about teaching young learners. I've got an idea about teaching business English. I've got an idea for using this video. So it was a much freer type of session, and great to hear voices that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise hear. Excellent. Yep, so really easy to set up, and I really recommend it. It's a great way to give something back to the teaching community, and a great way to make friends and meet other like-minded teachers and get your little burst of CPD every once in a while. Okay, right, now comes the chunky thing, blogs. I couldn't quite find a face that was overwhelmed. So this was kind of the idea being here that similarly to Twitter, when you first join, you have no idea who to follow. With blogs, there are so many blogs out there that you don't necessarily know where to start looking, perhaps even. So from the tweet that I sent out last Thursday, I got loads of responses. I got 12 responses, but there were kind of numerous blogs in each response. So I'm going to kind of go through these fairly quickly, but as I said, I'll send the link to the slides so that you can have a look at them afterwards. And also, when I kind of had this list of blogs, I thought, I could organize them by like general English and young learners and something more specific. And then it got a bit overwhelming for me because although some blogs are quite specific, other blogs have a mixture of lots of different things. So they are in absolutely no particular order. But again, different perspectives from teachers in different teaching environments. So for example, Naomi here, she actually teaches deaf and hard of hearing learners. So her blog, Visualizing Ideas, it's very much about that. It's about her experiences of teaching this group of people. Then we've got kind of Helen down here. Her blog focuses much more on younger learners. Okay, and Sandy Millen, who I must just give a special mention to, she's awesome. She, as well, at the beginning of lockdown, she did loads of blogs to really help support teachers with the transition to going online. But all of these people, obviously great educators and sharing their ideas and their experiences through their blogs. Okay, there's actually 4 pages of blogs, so I'm going to go through them. So here we have Tyson's site. Then obviously you've got things like Lexical Lab and Leo Sullivan's blog, which are very much more focused on teaching Lexis, with other things mixed in, but kind of the focus is on Lexis. And then similarly on this page, have I gone too far? Nope, maybe I have. Oh, no, I have. Similarly, Robin Walker, focusing on pronunciation. Scott Thornbury had a blog a few years ago called The A to Z of ELT, which was also great. And now Robin Walker has, Guru of Pronunciation. He's done it to focus much more on an A to Z of pronunciation. So if that's an area that you're interested in, great. And this one, Funky Socks and Dragons, I couldn't find the name. I think it was Anka, who runs this site. Again, very much focused on younger learners. So if that's your area, then that's great. And finally, these are the last few. Technologic has lots of great resources to use PowerPoints in your lessons. So creating PowerPoint games that you can easily edit your own classes. And then another quick one to give a special mention to, Rachel Roberts. Her site, ELT Resourceful, was very much focused on ELT, as you can imagine. And she also has another site now called Life Resourceful, because she's getting into life coaching, and also she's very much focused on teacher mental health and teacher burnout. So well worth looking into her as well. Fantastic. And obviously, another option is to start your own blog. So this is my blog. I started it again about 10 years ago, possibly a couple more years. And when I first started it, it was for me. And I mean, to be honest, it still really is for me in the most part. It's a place where I started storing ideas. So, I was going to these conferences, coming back with all my bits of paper. Paper would go in a folder, and then I would maybe, 3 months later think, oh, what was that activity? And then try to be shuffling through all my bits of paper to try to find what that activity was. Whereas actually having a blog meant that then I could easily go in and search for what I wanted. So yeah, a way to store the things that you're learning, and then you can access it anytime. And I also find as well that it's good for refreshing my memory. So sometimes if I'm teaching and I think, what can I do with my B1 learners today? I've got a category B1, so I can just click on the category, scroll through and kind of go, oh yeah, that worked really well. And so it's a way to kind of remind yourself of the activities that you haven't done for a while too. I recommend, this is on WordPress, EduBlogs. EduBlogs education, very easy to set up. There's also WordPress, which is very simple to use. And I've also heard of Blogspot, which was more popular a few years ago, but it is still around. Okay, so they're kind of the three top ones that you could use. Okay, podcasts. We're getting to the end now. So podcasts, I have to admit, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm really bad at multitasking, and I can't have a podcast on whilst I'm working, which other people I know can do. Although I read that there's this thing about multitasking, that if you're doing things where it's kind of language and language. So for example, if you're trying to listen to a podcast whilst you're trying to write a blog post, the two kind of clash. So that doesn't work. Whereas my husband, he listens to podcasts whilst he's doing origami, which is fine. You can fold paper and listen to the podcast, no problem. But yeah, I find it really difficult to find a time when I can focus on a podcast. But these are some podcasts which have been recommended to me, so I thought I would share them with you. Yep, they're kind of general ideas rather than being kind of specific to something. Yep, so if you're interested in podcasts, I would check them out. Obviously, I don't have a lot to say about them because I don't listen to them, so my apologies. Okay. Couple more quick things to mention. Online courses. These are 4 sites where you can do online courses, which are generally free. So Coursera, FutureLearn, edX, and Udemy, or Udemy. I don't know how you say that. Often they'll say that you can access the content for free, and then there might be options to upgrade. So for example, I think that often FutureLearn, their courses are free within a time frame. And if you complete all the activities within 5 weeks, that's fine. But then you've got the option of upgrading so that you can access the content outside of the course. So, if you think I'm not going to finish this in 5 weeks, you can upgrade and then you have lifelong access to it. But they have got so many great courses, whether it's teaching learners with dyslexia, teaching online, teaching intermediate grammar, and not necessarily just related to education. You can learn about anything. And Canvas, Canvas is another one which has lots of online courses available. So, I had a friend, Carmen actually, who was doing astrobiology. She did a course on astrobiology a couple of years ago I think it was through edX. But so really great, whatever you're interested in. And I've got another friend, Clem, who started doing a course in genealogy and then went on to do a master's because, he started this course, got really interested in it and decided, actually, I want to learn more about it. Okay. And obviously, as I've said before, this is our last our last webinar for the time being, because during the summer we're focusing on the CERT TESOL, and also we do the teacher training component, the teaching component for the DIP TESOL. So we started our CERT TESOL yesterday morning, and we have a rolling intake for the next 2 weeks. So if anybody still wants to join, it's not too late. You can apply now. And it's an 11-week course that runs through till the 28th of August. It's 6 weeks online, kind of self-study, autonomous learning. We'll give you all the content. And then 5 weeks when you'll be interacting much more with your peers, doing the teaching practice, and continuing with some of the content. So if anybody wants more information about that, I'll share my email in a minute. And also, as I say, we do the teaching component for the DIP TESOL. And the DIP TESOL is run by our colleagues in Barcelona at Oxford TEFL. And they have a new DIP TESOL course. It starts in October and in January. And similarly, you spend about 7 months online, and then you do your, what was face-to-face teaching practice, which has now become online teaching practice. And they have a scholarship at the moment that if you're interested in taking a DIP TESOL, you have the opportunity to win a full scholarship, which covers the cost of the course, or a half scholarship, which covers half of the cost of the course. So there's the link for that. You don't need to apply to do the DIP TESOL to enter the scholarship. So, you can enter the scholarship, and if you don't win a prize, that's fine. They won't kind of then hound you for, you said you were going to do a DIP TESOL. Excellent. So if you're interested in either of those, you can feel free to get in touch. Do we need to take the face-to-face part? So both for the CERT TESOL and the DIP TESOL, there is assessed teaching practice, which is, certainly on the CERT TESOL, the teaching practice is the main focus. There are different assignments, but really we want you to be a consummate, is that the right word? Consummate teacher in the classroom, whether that's an online classroom or a face-to-face classroom. So you do need to have observed teaching practice, Caddy. But send me an email and it's something we can discuss about whether we can observe your learners or you work with our learners. So finally, as I say, this is our last webinar for the time being, but we're going to come back in a couple of months and offer something we're thinking probably a monthly webinar. The reason being that, we don't want to end up repeating ourselves and showing you the same ideas again. So we need a kind of a bit of space, bit of headspace to make sure that we can give you new content, as it were, or at least, refresh your memory of content that you've done before. So if you do have any ideas for webinars that you would like for the future, you can send me an email, training@activelanguage.net. And then we'll see what we can do and see whether we can help you. So Sybil's just asked about seasoned teachers. So the CERT TESOL is really a pre-service qualification, but it is also possible for teachers who have perhaps been teaching but don't have a recognised qualification. And if you've been teaching for a minimum, I think it's of 2 years or possibly 3 years, then you can take the DIP TESOL, which is a diploma. So it's the next level up in your ELT professional career. But again, if you have any questions about the CERT TESOL, DIP TESOL, do feel free to send me a message, send me an email. Okay. And really, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's watched our webinars over the last couple of months. We are a small school, kind of 6 trainers really, but tends to be just kind of 2 of us working on a course at a time. And when we started this about 3 months ago, we had about 1,000 followers on Facebook, and now we're up to 4,000, and that's really all thanks to you guys. So, you know, we're really happy to be able to help you. If there's anything that you would like to do, if you haven't done so already, leaving a review on our page is a way that when other people are coming and looking at teacher training, then they can see that we're kind of offering quality content and should be trusted. So that would be great. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing in a minute. And if you haven't already signed up to our mailing list, you can sign up here. And then it gives you the options of kind of, do you want to receive information about our CERT TESOL, about the DIP TESOL, about our webinars, which, as I say, will be coming back in the future, or about, we're thinking as well of developing some shorter online courses, and then also a newsletter, which I'll get round to writing at some point. But yeah, so thank you to everyone. And also congratulations to you all. You know, you all dealt with this transition into online teaching incredibly well. And so from all of us at Active Language, have a wonderful summer or winter, whichever you're going into now. And I'll stop the share there, and I'll share the thing with you, mailing list. Just taking a second whilst it, there we go. Go back to my chat. Send to everyone. Okay, so there's the link for the mailing list, and I'll share that on Facebook as well somehow, I think. And yep, have a wonderful summer. I don't know whether people are going into having holidays now, or whether you're, you know, depending on your term time, maybe you're working. But it's been lovely to connect with teachers from all over the world. And yeah, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Okay, I'll send out the slides soon. Okay, bye-bye.